Welcome to the State of Northwestern State Athletics. Jason Pugh here with Athletic Director Greg Burke. And first time we've been able to sit down and do this in a couple of months. And Greg, I know these 2 months, maybe as much as any during the pandemic, have been a busy time for you. And we can't go into the future without talking about the past. And I know some things have changed in the past that really altered the course of what's happened in the fall for Northwestern.
The date that stands out right away with me, and I'm kind of a big dates guy. I remember dates for better or for worse, but August 6th was the date on which we announced that we would not compete in the fall with our fall sports teams. Very, very difficult decision. It started with the Southland Conference making a decision that we were not going to play Southland Conference competitions in any fall sport, and for no other reason than concern about the COVID-19 pandemic. No other reason than for that. There was a caveat that if a school so chose to play non-conference opponents, that they could do so. And our philosophy, along with some others, especially our sister institutions in Louisiana, was that the decision to play non-conference games after canceling all of our conference games just didn't seem to align philosophically with why we were doing it in the first place. So, but it was very, very difficult. I know it was difficult on our coaches, our student athletes, our fans. A decision that honestly, and this goes with the territory, I understand that, Jason, but a decision that was not going to be 100% popular either way. And believe me, nobody more than Greg Burke. I mean, I've been athletic director now for 24 years. Just take football alone. I did the numbers, over 270 football games during my 24 years, and I've missed 5. Home or away, I've missed 5. So obviously it's something I enjoy doing, but we made the decision on August 6th. We felt good about making the decision. I'm not saying the decision felt great, but it's something we decided and we moved forward.
A lot of this had to do with testing. I mean, maybe not a lot went into that decision, but it's certainly a factor within that. If fall sports had been played, how prepared was the department to handle the testing load, which is still going on even with teams not in season?
Short answer, we were prepared. Yes, we were absolutely prepared. And really it's interesting because the day before, August 5th, the NCAA Board of Governors, I know we're about to start the Major League Baseball playoffs, so I'll use an analogy. They threw a curveball at us, a really good Bert Blyleven, for the oldies in the room, the oldies listening, a Bert Blyleven curveball, and told us that we needed to start testing immediately. We knew that we had to do baseline testing. We knew that once competition started, that we had to test every week, but we suddenly were told, no, you need to be testing every week right now, and it needs to be a PCR test. Nothing else works. So we immediately got to work, and in the cases of some schools in our conference, they had an answer immediately at their fingertips. We had to delve a little bit deeper, I guess maybe 9 phone calls deep, but came up with a great solution, a company called Fugent Genetics, based out of Los Angeles, but about to open a location in Katy, Texas. A very good price, the best priced PCR test that anybody in our conference had, aside from free, and felt real good about it, and we were all ready to go. But then once we made the announcement we were not going to compete, that took the having to test everybody every week off the table, and what we're now doing is called surveillance testing, which means you test a certain amount of athletes from every sport every other week. So maybe this week you do baseball, softball, and tennis, and then do them 2 weeks later, and then next week you'll do football, volleyball, and soccer, and then do them 2 weeks later, sprinkling in staff members, administrators, athletic trainers.
Well, that changed a lot of things, and one thing that's changed without playing is what teams are allowed to do. Teams that are or would be in season, your football team, volleyball team, soccer team, your cross-country runners. How does that change for them? And I'm assuming most everybody else is running on what would be a normal, and I hate to use that word because of where we are, but a normal fall.
And even reflect back to testing, that still aligns with what everybody's doing. So for right now, everybody is in their out of season no matter what, and I'll take spring sports. I mean, for them, it's business as usual. And like you said, nothing's usual about right now, but spring sports as of right now, we're all set to play in the spring just as if they always would. So they're going through their normal practices, baseball, softball, tennis, and track, and they're being tested with the surveillance testing. Fall sports, it's almost like a flip, where what they normally would do in the spring, they're now doing in the fall. And like soccer and volleyball, there's a certain period of time where they can pick their 20 hours. Otherwise, they've got 8 hours. And football at some point is going to be putting on the pads in the fall for what you call spring practice, but now it's going to be in October. And so the good thing about all of this is, especially for the fall sports, not getting to play, they still get to throw the ball, pass the ball, kick the ball, spike the ball. And to me, that was very important for their mental health. And I think the NCAA has been real good about giving some latitude to the fall sports and opening up some opportunities for them in the fall. Now basketball, the sport we haven't talked about, they're going to start a ramp-up period. They are right now, actually. They've started a ramp-up period starting on October 10th. That begins their preseason, and then their season has been pushed back from the regular start, the anticipated start in early November until November 25th. But with testing and with them, we just got word as recently as this past Friday, the 25th of September, that once the basketball season starts, they've got to be tested 3 times a week. And so obviously we've got to start the week before they compete with that testing. And right now we actually, the thing about testing is it continues to evolve. Different methods, maybe more efficient, more economical. And I was actually on the phone this morning for about 30 minutes with the company looking at, especially if we're going to have to do it 3 times a week, something that's going to be efficient, expeditious, and economical all at the same time, because basketball, as of right now, is scheduled to start, and that's exciting. It's going to be exciting to watch a student athlete wearing our name on their jersey competing.
For the first time in more than 8 months.
Yes,
to see
exactly.
that. And I think you spoke to the rapidness and the ever-changing world of that. I think some of that has to be not just the test, but the results as well, being able to get those, because if you test 3 times a week, you need those results equally as quickly.
Well, and I think I guess when we talk about testing, I'm remiss if I don't mention that we have continued to be joined at the hip with our sports medicine partner, the Natchitoches Regional Medical Center, and Dr. Phyllis Mason is their chief medical officer. She's been great. Jason Drury, our director of sports medicine, and his staff have worked relentlessly, just doggedly. They have busy jobs as it is. And now you put this COVID stuff on top, and so I give athletic trainers nationwide just a huge pat on the back for everything that they've done. But with basketball, the efficiency is really important because they play so often. And I think I'm already thinking, you're a baseball guy. I mean, I'm already thinking to the spring how often baseball and softball play. So I think basketball in some ways is going to be a very good precursor for how things are going to function in the spring, because you're right. I mean, if you're playing, in basketball's case, 2 or 3 times a week, you need to know on a more regular basis.
Certainly during the non-conference season. Conference, 2 times a week, they have a nice schedule laid out, which we can get into right now, as a matter of fact, because when people look toward the spring, it's going to be a very, very busy and a very unique spring in terms of scheduling.
It is. We were really excited last week. We announced that the Southland Conference was going to play a 6-game conference schedule starting on February 20th. 11 teams in the Southland Conference play football. 4 of those teams opted to not play football in the spring, and I think a lot of that was based on the decision that they wanted to play in the fall, and they are and they have. But there's 7 teams in the conference that are going to play, and I guess for our student athletes, the excitement for me is the fact that they have an opportunity to play for a ring, a championship ring, to play for a trophy, to play for a postseason playoff berth. I mean, the NCAA, the football championship subdivision, already has set in place a 16-team postseason tournament, and every FCS conference will get 1 automatic qualifier. So there's going to be 1 Southland team in there for sure. There are also going to be some at-large opportunities, and so hopefully the Demons are going to be there one way or the other. But to me, that's exciting to be able to do that. I think, once again, just as I made the comment back in August that if the competitions were going to be canceled for the fall sports, it was very important that they had something to latch onto. They knew they were still going to be able to be active for their mental health. I mean, just these student athletes, some of them, they've been playing this sport for 10 to 15 years, and so it's what they know. Now, I know they're here, go to class and get a degree, and that's part of it, but take the sports away completely. So that's exciting to know, and soccer and volleyball schedules will be announced very soon, and they will have a chance to win a conference championship, to play a conference tournament. The NCAA also, to their credit, has set up postseason competition that is going to provide a postseason opportunity for at least one member from every Division I conference. And once again, I think that's really good. I do want to address, I know there's some discussion and some concern about playing football, especially a sport as grueling as football, in the spring and then coming back to play it in the fall. And I know there's a little bit of narrative on the part of some schools that, well, we don't want to play in the spring because it's going to be too tough on our football student athletes. To a degree, yes, but to a degree, maybe not so much. First of all, in the fall, you play 11 games in 12 weeks. So you get one break at some point during the course of a 12-week period. In the spring, the NSU Demons and the rest of the Southland schools will play 6 games over a 9-week period. So if you stop and think about that, you're going to get a break every 2 games. That just doesn't happen in the fall. So first of all, they're going to have an opportunity to make sure that their bodies stay refreshed and have a chance to recuperate a little bit. And secondly, I don't think it should be lost that football teams put the pads on and put the helmets on in the spring anyway. I mean, they don't tap dance around. They get out there and for 3 straight Saturdays as part of their 15-day period, they're out there scrimmaging and to use an old phrase, they're slobber knocking?
Slobber knockers.
Slobber knockers. I mean, they're out there playing football the way that we all like to see it played, hard and really getting after it. And so it's not as if they don't do something in the spring anyway. So I think we found a real good happy medium. What I think it would be a good solution every spring? Absolutely not. But I also don't. I would be very surprised if a football student athlete said, "Look, I just don't think I can do this." No, they want to get out there and they want to play. There's 6 games in the spring. There will be enough recovery time. In fact, the regular season ends. The last regular season game is on April 10th. Now, I hope we're playing in the first round of the playoffs on the 24th and continuing to play. But for a lot of schools, they're going to be done who are playing in the spring. And it's not just us. I mean, keep in mind, 75 to 80% of the Division I programs in America, FBS or FCS, are not playing this fall. They're going to play in the spring. So for most of those schools, they're going to be done playing in early April. So you're going to have a good amount of time to recuperate. But the bottom line is it's going to be a busy spring, as you said. It's going to be fun. We're going to try to take advantage of the opportunity to have all of our sports playing at the same time. I know there's a day, as an example, we're going to have a home basketball doubleheader, a home football game that night, and oh, by the way, also going on is going to be a home baseball game. Not every Saturday is going to be like that, but someone also made the comment to me when we canceled fall sports, and there was talk about playing in the spring, and I know there was some doubt about whether or not that would happen, but they said, well, gosh, if you can play in the spring, how are you all being you, me, and our staff, how are you all going to be able to pull off playing all of those events in the spring? And my answer was very basic. If it means giving our fall student athletes the opportunity to play their season, we'll find a way to make it work. It's not going to be too hard on us. We'll find a way to make it work for them.
Well, our good buddy John Cohen, retired baseball coach here, now the athletic director at State, could probably give us some hints with Super Bulldog Weekend. We can have several Super Demon
Absolutely
in the spring. And one thing that has changed, in addition to not playing, student athletes, certainly from the fall sports, have a little different schedule this fall. I know there's some things that they've done away from the classroom and away from the weight room or the practice.
Well, starting with academics, and this is a university-wide, and this is all definitely a byproduct of COVID, but right now, very few classes are meeting in person full-time. There's the hybrid where you're in a Tuesday, Thursday class, and on Tuesday you go to the class, and on Thursday you are tuning in virtually, and the other half who are tuning in virtually on Tuesday are there Thursday type thing. A lot of online classes, and we were headed that way a little bit anyway. I mean, you could see that coming over the last several years, but it's also been a change. I mean, it was a change for our student athletes in the spring who had to suddenly maybe taking 15 hours of in classroom, and everybody got sent home, and those 15 hours were converted to online classes. And even if you're the best of students, that's difficult. And I think that our student athletes have done a great job. First of all, we had a record 3.17 grade point average spring semester with our student athletes, despite the change. I give them great credit for pivoting. I also give a lot of credit to our coaches for continuing to encourage and stay with our student athletes, and our academic support staff led by Caitlin McKenna. They have done just an unbelievable job of continuing to communicate and engage and support our student athletes during this difficult time. I've mentioned mental health before. We've really tried to keep them engaged, and unfortunately, community service, as you and I both know it, we right now we can't go into schools. I mean, there aren't the things that we normally do, but just as an example, I'm really proud of our student athletes advisory committee for leading an effort within our department. We have about 500 coaches and staff, and said, hey, let's donate at least one item for everybody in our department. And I don't know, they were between 700 and 800 items that are being added to the university collection of items that are going to be going to Lake Charles this week. And then finally, I've mentioned mental health a couple of times, but I think it's been very important. I think our coaches have done a good job of remaining engaged with our student athletes, because this is challenging. I will say this, Jason, this is challenging for our coaches. It's challenging for our staff in so many different ways. And I think we've tried to just, whether it's a one-on-one visit, a one-on-one call, an email, a text, or more in group settings, mask up, of course, but virtually or whatever, I think it's been very, very important for us as a department to stay engaged. I actually communicated with every head coach just this morning and said, hey, give me your practice schedule this week. I just want to come by and visit with your team for a few minutes. And I think all of that is how we're functioning right now, and we're finding a way to make it work.
And we've all become masters of Zoom and WebEx, all of those at the time. And that's, you kind of touched on it there. Everyone's kind of gone through a different time, whether it's been student athletes or staff.
They have. And someone asked me the question, well, gosh, you're not playing any games. What are your coaches doing? And I think that's a fair question. It's an understandable question, because I think most people, what do they mainly see when it comes to our athletic program? They see us when the lights come on. Turpin Stadium, Prather Coliseum, the Demon Diamond, whatever, Brown Stroud Field. They see us when the lights come on. But more so than ever, working in college athletics is so multi-level, so multifaceted. I mean, our coaches, as an example, they're still recruiting. And the NCAA has extended the recruiting ban until December 31st, which means our coaches can't go out and watch, and recruits cannot come on campus for official or even unofficial visits. So virtual, once again, you mentioned WebExes and Zooms, virtual recruiting, that's all the rave right now. I mean, and our coaches are doing a great job of that, spending a lot of time doing the recruiting that way, but also spending a lot of time planning on how to do that. I mean, you don't just flip that laptop on and Zoom with a recruit. I mean, you've got to plan, how are you going to do it? What approach are you going to take? How are you going to explain things in a way that presents us in the best way possible? Of course, the coaches continue to support the student athletes academically. They're involved in, they've got to keep up with the compliance. There's so much the coaches are doing. Then you flip over to our staff. And once again, that's me, that's you, that's the rest of our staff. I've mentioned already Caitlin in academics, but right now our staff, and you talked about what the spring is going to be like, our staff is preparing for a spring like no other. And maybe with a touch of trepidation because we'd never done it before, but also with, I think, with a lot of anticipation and excitement about the opportunity. I know we're talking about resurrecting, and we're going to call it something different, but way back in my early days as athletic director, we had something called the total ticket, which was one ticket for the entire year to every athletic event. And we're going to do something like that in the spring. I mean, pretty much everybody's playing, so we're going to create something very similar to that. We're continuing to discuss ways in which we can engage our fan base virtually, our student body virtually, because that, once again, that's the way things are today. And nobody's bored right now, to put it in a nutshell. Everybody's very, very busy doing what needs to be done.
All learned to adapt on the fly. It's been a challenging 6 to 7 months. We look forward to the return of basketball, and like you said, a spring like no other, if we can get into our Jim Nance Masters moment there instead of a tradition like no other. But Greg, is there anything you'd like to add to wrap things?
Well, these are definitely unusual, challenging times, and I speak to our fan base. I speak to our student athletes. There's one of two ways to go about it. If I'm talking to our student athletes, because they have got to keep themselves safe, or they're not going to get to compete, and we're not going to get to watch them compete. Doing that, it's not easy. It's not in your comfort zone. It's not what you normally do. But gosh, right now it's got to be the priority. I mean, I know it just seems like it's just so overstated, and you keep hearing it. But wearing a mask, washing your hands, doing social distancing, that's proven. And I know that there's different schools of thought, and there's the political rhetoric and all that about the virus, but it's real. I mean, once again, in talking with our sports medicine staff, talking with the folks at the Natchitoches Regional Medical Center, the numbers don't lie. It's real, and people have different opinions about how seriously real it is, though. But if you're in our position and you have been entrusted with the livelihood and the lives of these student athletes, we're going to err on the side which makes sure that we're taking care of them. And then what we're asking of them is then to take care of themselves, because to close, as I think about the spring and I think about everybody playing, and I think about the opportunity for Northwestern State to hold up a bunch of hardware, AKA championship trophies in the spring, and I feel really good about that for pretty much every one of our teams. But once again, we've got to get, to use a baseball analogy, we've got to get to the batter's box first before we can do that. Track, we got to get to the start line. Basketball, we got to get to center court for the tip, and on and on and on. But it's exciting, and we're still here. We appreciate you as our fans continuing to stick with us. Hopefully you're engaging with us on social media. Our external staff, I think, is doing just an unbelievable job of trying to be creative and trying to keep things spiced up. And when we get to the spring, it's going to be social media overload for sure. But these are times which, as I've said over and over, you have one of two ways to deal with it. You either let it get on top of you or stay on top of it. And I know what the demon way is. We're going to stay on top of it. So appreciate the time. Good to visit. And everybody, as always, fork 'em demons.
Greg, thank you for your time. I know you're out of meetings, and hopefully we can do this again a little shorter than a 2-month one.
Look forward to it.
Thanks again. As always, fork 'em demons.